We're wrapping up season 1 of The Growth Department with a guest who ties a perfect bow on the biggest lessons we've explored. In this episode, we dive into the scrappy early days of founder-led sales, what it takes to build a business that truly adds value, and how to scale with excellent systems and a thriving company culture.
A lot of people, when starting their business, they think busyness is business. Every idea is brilliant until you start executing it. Anybody that tells you they could do everything, in my mind, you're telling me you really do nothing well. Delegation is key. You can't grow without it. You should not be thinking, how can I get this done? But you should be saying, how can I find the right people to do this for me consistently? Your sales process should be one of the first things that you refine down to a science.
We've talked a lot about building authority and about how to get on podcasts in different episodes. We're going to tie two together here today with Dennis Meador. He's a marketing strategist who helps business owners build real-world authority, and he's built his own company that's just blown up in the last year. So, DM, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm pretty pumped to dive into this because what you do for work touches on what so many other folks are trying to get into right now, which is,
yes,
how do I have people know what I do? So what inspired you to start your business?
I've been a business owner since I was 14. So 14 years old, had a company for a few years. I mean, it wasn't a LLC. My first LLC was like 1920. It was in marketing, and I was able to run my business remotely from Romania off of, this is early 2000s, off of calling cards and dial-up internet. Did that for, 4 or 5 years, ended up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I've been in the marketing arena and the entrepreneurship arena, kind of both of them side by side my entire career. So, I've had social agencies, I've had SEO agencies, I've had branding agencies. I've come up with some really cool, fun things like a text game for a community. So what brings me to today is just my background. I ended up niching down with attorneys about 20 years ago. And that's why I launched my first niche, being with the legal field.
And what is your niche focus on today? What do you help this legal field do?
We do turnkey podcasting, but really what I tell people is podcasting is almost a lemming in what we do. And it's not that we're disregarding it. It's evergreen content. It's going to be good forever. And it's good when you could take something as a throwaway that isn't a throwaway. It's actually an asset. And then use that to build a marketing ecosystem. So for example, with our clients, if they do one show a month, which is about a half hour of their time, all of our shows are FAQ shows for building authority. With that one show, they get 30 assets. So we do 10 reels or shorts, 10 audiograms, and 10 static posts from one show. We then take all of that content, 30 pieces, and we put it on up to 10 outlets for them. We actually manage that social media aspect for them as well. We then take that and put it into, we create FAQ pages for their website to help with SEO. We're putting them on 25 different channels between podcast and video. So really what we try to do is just in a very low friction way, create an entire marketing ecosystem with just a little bit of time from our clients. That's ultimately our goal. And that marketing ecosystem is to build authority. These are authority building content, assets. Everything is all about differentiation. Our show that we're getting ready to launch, our internal, or not internal, but our podcast that we're making, the theme of the show is conquering sameness one platform at a time. It's a superhero-based show. But yeah, so that's what we do, and that's how we help attorneys is they give us a little bit of time, and then we use question-based podcasting to then help with authority, help with scaling. The LLMs and the GPTs are all based off of question-based search. So we're future-proofing and present-proofing their market.
Wow. So you've niched down to help with marketing growth for attorneys in the legal field for about 20 years. When did you realize, wow, this podcast piece, this evergreen content, this authority piece is what's missing?
So I had a partnership with an individual before this, and from about 18 to 23, mid 18 to 23, a little over, 5 years. And one of the things, so I was over just sales and product development and things like that. Then my business partner was over operations. And he was the primary owner of the company, and then I had come in on a contract to then, it was like a 5-year contract, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, as me and my team were talking to attorneys, one of the things that moved the needle and one of the things that we got asked about more than anything was podcasting. And so I went to my business partner and I was like, man, we should start a podcast network for lawyers. And he's like, no, I think there needs to be a good answering service out there for the legal industry. So let's do that instead. I was like, listen, I'm not going to argue with you. So then our 5-year contract came up. He bought me out, which I was fine with. I had helped grow the company from 78 clients and under $1 million in revenue. When I left, we had around 400 clients and about 5 million in revenue.
Wow.
He had been working that company 9 years before I came along, and then in 5 years. And I'm not saying I did it all because he obviously had the foundation and the reputation, but I was able to monetize that in a better way. So it really came from, and I have a background. I did a podcast in Austin in 2019. It was just a fun one, food, music, life. I interviewed people like Ali Khan from the Food Network. He has show Cheap Eats and different shows that he's like judges on if you watch that stuff. I had like musicians in Austin that had their own days and like had their own festivals and things like that. So I learned a lot about podcasting and production then. And then, so all I did is I took a side fun project where I created 60, episodes with a crew of 10 over a 3 to 4 month period and spent 150 grand on a podcast and no monetization. And then, but I knew I was learning something and I knew it was a medium that I wanted to be better at between YouTube and podcasting. And so I kind of jumped in on the side. And so all of those pieces came together. As an entrepreneur, I keep a notebook that has 20 to 30 actionable businesses that could be done in a weekend, upwards of 100. Like my brain, just like I'll sit in a restaurant and be like, okay, they make this and this. I know food, and probably, and I could just sit there and tell my wife like margins, how much they take home themselves. Like I just kind of, it's just kind of, I don't know. To me, it's fun, to kind of have that thinking process. So I'll sit down and just like use a mental exercise where I'll come up, I'll figure the margins, the costs, the nets, and all that stuff, and just put that all in that notebook to leave it there, because if I don't let it out, it just spins around in my head. But if I get it into that notebook, get it written down, now I know that I can always come back to it. So kind of took that. The Legal Podcast Network was the idea that I had when I was with my partner, that I'd kind of fleshed out how I would do it. So I was 4 months away from getting married when he canceled our contract. And I had to look at my almost bride and be like, hey, this X amount of money I've been making, as of right this moment, for the next 4 months, I'm going to make X. But after that, there's nothing. So I got to create a company to replace this income. It took me about 6 or 7 months to replace that income. But we launched May 1st. By January, the end of January, first part of February, we were able to take our honeymoon and be gone for a month in Thailand and Bali. And I was hands off with the business within 7
Wow.
months,
Okay.
6 months. Yeah,
So you listened to what people were telling you their problem was, and you actually made a company to solve it quickly. It's cool.
exactly.
And
Is that what it's supposed to be about? Like
and
we're
you
supposed to be
enjoy
solving
doing it.
problems.
That's like good to great. You had the hedgehog concepts, but what can you be the best in the world at? Solves a problem and you actually like doing. Like that's you found the little sweet spot right there with this company, it sounds like.
Yeah, because it's fun and creative. And most people that have my skill set don't get to be creative. We're expected to drive revenue, to drive growth, and nothing wrong with driving revenue, driving growth. But I also like to be a geek and get into, my conversion rate on my email marketing. I liked it, and what I did, and we can go into it, but I can talk about like how I grew a company and how I'm able to be hands off if I need to for a decent amount of time so quickly.
Yeah, you open the door. Let's go right in. How did you get May to January? How did you grow that quickly so that you could just be not there for a month?
So what I did is I took the product myself to market, and I have traditionally, since I've been 18, 19 years old, done very well in sales. I found my niche with attorneys. I do very well with them. I'm not intimidated by them. I can argue logically. I can go back and forth. And so, it was a niche down for me. So I probably brought on about our first 100 customers. And in doing that, what that allowed me to do is then While I was focused on that, I would bring in somebody who would be focused on another area, and I would kind of split the two. So then I would be 50% this, 50% that, and I would work through them, get their systems, understand everything about their department, especially because like the background, fulfillment, all that stuff, I've typically never been over. My partners have always done that. But I decided this time, after the second time of a business partner writing me out of the will, I decided no, no partners. So I would bring on a director or somebody who had the experience and background that could be a director. And almost all of them started, and I was very fortunate, started at an entry level with me because of my background, and some of them I'd worked with in the past. So they came in making almost nothing, but they saw what we were doing. And my first goal was very quickly to get those individuals to the financial place that they need to be. So I sold till we had enough ARR, or, monthly, actually it was MRR, monthly recurring revenue, to be able to cover these 5 salaries, so that each one of them. And then as I worked with them, I would say, this is your thing. We're just, I just need to know what needs to be reported back to me. And then by the time I'd come to it, now I just have a half-hour weekly meeting with each of them. We go over their statistics, what I call metrics that matter, because there's a million metrics in any business. But what are the metrics that really drive, on one side and on the other? The middle metrics aren't usually as important, but that's what most people focus on. It's the starting metric for example, in our sales department, the starting metric is how many dials did you make? Now, honestly, am I trying to count dials of my people? No, but I need them to have 15 appointments a week. So if I know it takes approximately 100 dials a day to get to 15 appointments a week, so I kind of get that flush front end. And then all this middle stuff, I'm like, hey, it's your job to now get X amount of sales per month. Your seat costs me this much, so I need this much minimum, but here's really my expectation of X to Z. If you exceed that, then I'm going to make sure that you're appreciated for it. If you go below that, we're going to sit down, train, and see if this is something for you. So just each department one by one going by, and that's what I've been doing, and it's worked well.
Founder led sales is important. You have to know how to sell as a founder. Like, you have to
Absolutely.
give it a whirl, try it out. You have to do it. It's not optional. Getting a team and trusting them to do their jobs. That's so hard for people when it's their baby, to just trust people and be good leaders and let them shine the way that they're meant to shine. Is that something you've always done? Just let your people run
It
and
is.
okay.
My parents used to tease me. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And so I never, they used to jokingly say, you can never ask him to do anything because it's always, hey, Josh, hey, Tiff, hey, one of my younger brothers and sisters. And doubtless by the time we got out the door, they were holding the bag of trash and they were walking with me to go to the trash and throwing it away. And so I've always been a delegator. That's my first business, was literally just me delegating snow shoveling, raking leaves, mowing lawns, and newspaper routes to a group of 12, 13-year-old boys, him and my brother and his friends. I got all the jobs. I collected all the money. And then I just went back to this crew and said, all right, you've got this house, you've got this house. And it'd be their job. They wanted to do the work, but they were afraid to go knock on the doors and build the relationships. So that it's just always been delegation and taking the lead on sales. I mean, I've done it since my very first. I mean, you could call it business. Some people, in some people's minds, it's a lemonade stand. I did it for 3 years. It paid for me to have the nice clothes, the shoes. We were definitely on the lowest rung of the middle income, at the top rung of, I mean, I don't know. Are we allowed to say that? I could say it about myself. I was white trash, right? So, like, that's where I came from. And so for me, I never had a problem like, delegating or trusting other people. Because at the end of the day, if you have proper reporting in place, then trust is what it's all about. You can't build a company. That's the number one skill. I talk to attorneys a lot, and a lot of my conversations with attorneys, especially solo attorneys, has been about being willing to delegate. Because they're like, oh well, I was doing some marketing, but then I got busy, and I'm like, what do you mean you got busy? Like, do you have a background in marketing? Well, no, I don't have a background in marketing, but it's like you need to delegate that out. So delegation is key. You can't grow without it.
Delegation is key, and it costs money. It's true, but you can't really grow one person.
Yeah.
Can't. You need even influencers who look like they're one person on the internet. They have teams of 10, 20 that are booking
Yep.
appointments for them, making their graphics, posting for them, writing all of their captions. Like you can't do something all by yourself. Okay, tell us more about this growth spurt before you went on your honeymoon. What did you do?
So again, I went in, I sold the product, and one of the reasons I like to sell the product is I like to hear what they do and they don't like about it, but I also want to create a duplicatable sales process. So everything you do when you jump into that aspect of your company is not to take care of it until you find somebody to do it. It's to build the systems and the procedures and the reporting that you need to know what's going on and understand what's going on in the department. So many people see, well, I'm doing that until I get somebody good to take it over. Well, no, build it out, build what you need, then bring in that person, or build side by side with somebody, like I said, where my directors came in kind of like at a lower, but then we built their department and we built everything together in meeting and understanding. And then we were able, I was just able to go to one and then the other. So we built that, and then probably about 6 months into it, I was like, all right, I know the big problem. This is the thing. We don't have like, we were just communicating with clients as they communicated with us, and we were losing clients for the simple fact there's like, I just don't know what's going on with you guys. So we came up with a new concept, and not concept, but tweaked our product. And every Monday now, our clients get a full email with literally like, this is when your last podcast went out. This is when the next one goes out. Here's all of your assets that we've created that need to be approved so we can post them. Here's the schedule of all of the stuff, what's going to go out when and where. Here is, your stats from YouTube and downloads and da 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 da. And it's just like a 7 to 10 minute email every Monday for them to go through and see everything. So our retention and our the frustration for our clients reduced greatly very quickly by doing that. So
For
it's like,
sure.
until you get into like doing things, every idea is brilliant until you start executing it. And then once you start executing it, the market shows you the holes or the problems with your product. And so then, and you don't, the first time somebody says, well, why isn't it purple? You don't change it to purple. And then, why isn't it red? You don't change it to red. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where you have several layered discussions, and then you can tell, okay, this is something that's coming up time and time again that they aren't understanding, or I'm not being clear on. I'm not presenting something in a way that makes it seem simple and easy for them. So being able to do that and just constantly refine your product and your processes when you're hands on, the more you spend being a part of things in the beginning and establishing from the beginning, here's my 1 year plan, my 3 year plan. My team knows the goal is by year 7, I live in Southeast Asia and I meet with them once a week. They know that's the goal. All the directors know that when we're at that point, about how much money they'll be making. That next level below them knows about how much money they'll be making. And so everyone's all looking towards the same sort of goals. I also do every month, I gather my whole team around because we're completely remote. I've got about 40 people. I've got some in the Philippines. I've got a pretty decent amount of Pakistan. They do different aspects of what we do, website stuff, things like that internally. I've got a kid in South Africa that does AI, that he actually used to live across from me here on the island, and his mother and father ran a restaurant across the street. And so then I just started chatting with him, and he was like, yeah, I want to do something on the internet. And I'm like, learn AI. And like 2 months later, he comes back to me. He's like 20, 21 at the time. And he's like, yeah, I took about 10 courses on that. And I was like, you want a job? So I brought him in, and now he animates through AI our podcast. It's a superhero, it's a 80s and 90s superhero cartoon style podcast called BAM, Building Authority Through Media. I'm Bam Man. And I bring in another knowledgeable individual about, because as I said earlier, conquering sameness one platform at a time. It's going to be about LinkedIn. We have 4 episodes with people who are LinkedIn specialists. And
Mhm.
we go through kind of the traps and pitfalls and things that can happen. And we battle these monsters, the biohazard of our bio or whatever, and all that fun stuff. So,
All right. So if we're talking about BAM, this building authority, it's a pretty hot topic when folks have either they're individuals and they want to grow their business or get a different job or position themselves as authority, or they have a business and they want it to grow. How is building authority through podcasts or consistent content different now than it used to be?
I think because, and I was thinking about this the other day, because of it used to be founder led marketing was seen as a cheap alternative to real marketing. So, like, new realtors would do it, insurance agents would do it. So, it wasn't seen in the light that it is now. But because of the huge success, acquisition.com with Hermosi, Gary Vee, and his big successes, because of the success of now larger scale businesses doing founder led marketing, that is the mind frame and the understanding because people no longer trust logos. They no longer trust corporations. They want to find people that are authentic and that they trust. And so by building your marketing around the individual that they're going to interact with and building trust, it's the old, what I tell people is the old know, like, trust. What video and podcasting and what we do, it builds the know and the like. So all they need to do when they contact you is verify the trust. Are you the same person that I saw on camera? Are you the same person that did that podcast? Or am I going to walk in the door and I'm not going to hear a I'm going to hear a what do you want? And it's two totally different people. So if they can verify that trust, then you're going to get the clients despite being in an industry that's been overly commoditized, like the legal industry, where people now shop based on hourly rate, not experience. But if I can assuage your fears and give you clarity to your situation before you ever, call me, because a lot of people want to understand what's going on before they seek someone to help them. So when they start typing in those question-based things that we know that somebody fits a client archetype, we want our clients to be the one answering those questions, either with shorts and reels or an entire, podcast episode or a section on their website with the FAQ from a podcast episode. So it's really all about being there when they're in that research and understanding and clarity stage. Because if by the time they're looking for an attorney, they've listened to 3, 4, 5 of your podcasts and they've, been on your website 4 or 5 times, it's only natural for them to come to you and say, not, well, how much are you? It's going to be, how much would it cost for me to be able to work with you? And that's a totally different frame of mind.
Yes, people will pay more willingly. Like, I want this guy or gal that I trust anytime.
Exactly.
So back to the whole, like, it used to be gross of, hey, look at me, look at me. Still today, there are folks, me included, that feel a little uncomfortable getting on camera, or, it feels like we're pounding our chest and saying, look how great I am. How can somebody who's shy or doesn't feel good about it start with this founder led marketing?
Well, I think being behind a camera, especially in private, like most of us are with podcasting now, we have our own little studios and do our own little thing. It's just like, I don't think about that 100 or 1,000 or, if it goes viral in a million plus. See, I don't think about that. I think about this moment, the person I'm talking to. I push all of that out. And so what we tell our clients is, listen, we're not asking you to do anything different than you would sitting across the desk from a potential client. They're going to ask a question, you're going to give an answer. They're going to ask a question, you're going to give an answer. And that's really all we're doing. We just happen to be doing it virtually. The good thing is with attorneys, again, is before the pandemic, I couldn't get an attorney to go maybe on Zoom, but they're all like, "Oh, you're going to take over my computer? I don't know this technology." And no. But because the court systems were like, "Nope, you're on Zoom now." I use Zoom even though it's not for our podcast, but when we do demos and stuff,
Uh-huh.
not because it's the best tool to, do a demo on, but because it's the one that attorneys won't be like, "What is this program? Is China on my computer? I can't have China seeing my personal client files," that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying every attorney's like that, but we ran into it enough that, but now with the pandemic and people being used to doing consultations and court via Zoom, now they're more comfortable and they learned it's just sitting there and talking. So that's what we try to do. And we try to help to make sure that, they have a good background and lighting and things like that. But at the end of the day, if they have lighting that's 80% of what it could be, but their content and their answers are clear and are articulate and answer questions and help people, then they're going to be very successful at the campaign like this. On the flip side, they could have the perfect setup, and if they offer no value in what they're saying or they use a bunch of attorney speak that's over people's heads, they're not going to get nearly as much results as they would out of it. Again, just kind of making it more palatable for the everyday man.
How can you call a client on BS or call a client on, hey, you don't sound authentic? Like I've talked to you in normal conversations, and what you're doing in this episode is like, that's not you. Knock it off.
Well, first of all, luckily, I don't have to. I have a full time producer, editor
Hmm.
that runs the shows. And then we have hosts that actually, we call them co hosts, and they do
Hmm.
the show where they ask the question of the attorney. So we provide the hosts and all of that. And so if we have a client, they might just say, hey, let's do that one again, attorney. And this time, I want you to act like there's somebody sitting across from you instead of like in your mind, you're talking to another attorney, or this is a show for attorneys. Remember, this show is for your potential client. So speak
Uh-huh.
as you would to a potential client. So we just remind them who the show's for. You're not on a podcast for other attorneys to think you're smart and say hello to you at conferences and be impressed by you. You're on a podcast because you want to grow from 3 new clients a month to 12 new clients a month. And the way you're going to do it is by providing, again, clarity, providing answers, and giving people what they're looking for.
What are some ways that you've built trust and you've watched your clients build trust through this marketing?
I think the best way that you can build trust through this sort of marketing is the knowledge set. So again, if I have a very niche question, maybe the question is, what happens to my boat during a divorce, right?
Hmm.
And so, you know, it's an indication of a high asset divorce. I go online, I type that in, and now what we're able to do is then have an attorney that answers that question. Well, there's not very many attorneys answering a question like that. All attorneys' websites, I don't want to say all, but a lot of attorneys' website is just like, I do that. I'm a criminal defense attorney. Well, can you help me with DUI? Yep, I do that. And there's no like, is it a first or second? What's the issue? There's no like further beyond that. And anybody that tells you they can do everything, in my mind, you're telling me you really do nothing well. So when you tell me you do something very well, I want to work with you if that's my issue. And so that's the dynamic we're trying to create, is very specific content for very specific client archetypes, so that it cultivates that trust through the questions that are being answered, then showing up, scaling in Google, YouTube, and even clients that are getting cited by ChatGPT now because they have so much FAQ and QA based content on their sites, and in general, they're getting cited by these LLMs and GPT models.
How has That's a great segue into how has AI changed how people are finding your business today or finding someone's business today on the internet?
I think that AI is creating more of a problem for people to be found than a solution overall. And here's what I mean. I mean, if I wanted to, I could just clone myself and hire somebody in another country and just have them full time make, just countless videos, countless videos. They don't have to be high quality, but it could be, the market is being inundated because it's easy. Or it's easy to get in the market. It's not easy to do well in the market. Let's put it that way. And so imagine if you had like an open casting call for the NFL and they let everybody play a football game. Like, there would be people out there getting their heads smashed in, not the right size. They might have the spirit for it. They might have the desire for it, but they're not going to do it. And it's kind of been the same way. Is you had a lot of professionals doing this, and now, and I'm not saying anybody that comes in and tries to do their own thing shouldn't be here, but when you get smashed, you remember that movie Rudy back in the day? Did you
Oh,
ever see
yeah.
that?
We just watched,
Okay.
The Lord of the Rings where Rudy was his little buddy, Sam.
Okay, yeah. So with Rudy, what did everybody love about him? He got smashed and he got right back up, and he got smashed and he got right back up. Well, that's the way it is with a lot of things out there. Most people think I'm going to be drafted by the NFL because I declared myself to be. And it's like, do you know how many kids declare themselves for the draft every year and then walk away from, whatever draft sports league? And I'm using a lot of sports metaphors today, and I don't
Oh.
even watch them. But, you know, I'm broing out today.
Here we go.
So broing out with Chelsey. That's the name of your podcast
It's
now. Uh,
preseason. We're broing out.
yeah. So, but most people don't declare themselves eligible for the draft unless they've been through Pee Wee football or, AAU basketball, and they've been through a series of steps to get there. But a lot of people get frustrated that they don't step on the field of marketing or content and they're not a superstar within 3 months. I've been doing marketing for 30 years, and now I spend a significant portion of my time and I'm glad my company affords this for me, but to be looking actively at programs, understanding, knowing this, what's coming, what's past, and I spend so much time doing it. And I've been selling in the marketing field for 30 years, but I've been providing as a provider different types of opportunities for 25 plus years.
Mhm.
And yet here I am still like with AI. I've spent so much time. And then that other young man that I told you about in South Africa, I mean, I just send him. I used to look it up myself, but I don't even know how to do most of the stuff. And I'm like, oh, hey, what is this program? Oh, it's kind of junky. It's clanky. It doesn't work. Oh, this one's good. We should try it out to do this project or blah blah blah. So, if I'm having that much time and effort to try to keep up, I can't imagine coming into this now without a big, huge knowledge set. That's why I think finding somebody in whatever skill set it is, whether it's AI, implementations. We had to bring in a systems and implementations company to help us. But finding those pieces, not just internally, but externally to help your company move. When finding the right internal piece, you're just not quite finding it, then you've got to bring in those people to help set that up. And then that way you can expand and contract on your costs.
This goes back to one of the first topics we touched on, which was trusting your team. That could also be a fractional person that you bring in, or your clients are hiring you to say, here, please just do this marketing thing. I don't
Mhm.
have the time. I don't have the knowledge. I'm not interested in it, or something. Getting the help that they need to get the thing done. It's not possible to do it all or to know all of these systems today
No,
at all.
it's just not. I mean, like I said, with especially with AI, like if you believed your feed, you would think that all you have to do is find two good AI models and you could just build $1 billion company and sit back because hey, 12-year-olds are doing it now and blah blah blah. But it's like it's never as simple. All AI is right now is what network marketing was sold as a few years ago, is what having your own marketing agency was sold as, is what it's the hype that's used to sell something small of substance. Now I'm not saying it won't catch up, and I'm not saying that there aren't some AI programs that aren't tremendous and do things that blow us out of the water, but when we see these little ads of somebody who's like, look at this 30 seconds of this immersive world that I built in Google VO. It's version 3.7 or whatever version they're on now. And what they don't tell you is they spent 300 hours to build it and learn the product, and they've been doing this sort of stuff for 30 years. And so then everyone's like, well, I could just build a whole virtual world and, just by prompts now. And it's just like, get in and do it and see what's there because it's not always what we're thinking it is.
If you're new to social media or aren't in there every day and you go in for the first time, your whole feed is probably going to be here's how you get rich in 10 minutes. Here's how you get 100,000 followers in 5 minutes. And that's everybody's posting about it because they're just using AI. Hey, give me 30 posts for this month. So all the posts are sounding the same, all of the copy sounding the same. And it's
Hmm.
it's it's annoying as the consumer. How do you stand out in this oversaturated world of crap content?
Because we're using real people to build all the content. The content, all of our internal content, that we use, our emails, our giveaways. I record every meeting I'm in, take all my podcasts, and my team just rips a thought out of there or rips a section out of there and creates content out of it. So if your content is coming originally from a person, AI is going to be a good tool. But when you're counting on AI to create the content, that is when you get into like the same thing over and over. And then we always use a QA process on the other side of every piece that we do, especially if any AI is in it. So internally we say AI, then eyes. Nothing hits the feed and nothing goes to a client unless an internal set of eyes who can properly judge what it's supposed to be spelled and look like, and will that make sense culturally. So I have a a team of US people that are just QA people, and all they do is sit around and watch videos and, podcasts. And I'm like, do you hate me yet? And they're like, no, it's kind of cool. I'm learning all this stuff about law that I never knew. Can you imagine sitting around watching like, podcasts of attorneys randomly across the US for 3, 4 hours a day? But, they get to stay home. They get
Uh-huh.
to take care of other things. And so, it's a win-win for everybody.
What key lessons or strategies have been the most valuable in growing this sustainable business of yours?
We've kind of touched on them, but I think one key is always listening to what the clients say. I have a philosophy that if I hear something positive, there's probably 3 or 4 more people that feel that way. If I hear something negative, there's probably 10 or 12 people that feel that way. So anytime I get negative feedback, especially when I hear it a second time, because some people are outliers, right? But when I hear that complaint a second time, then I come in and I figure out, how can we fix this? How can we preemptively fix it? For me, and I would encourage any and all founders to, if you can preemptively, like our sales process, the way it was built was me going to market, hearing the questions that I got at the end. And I always tell people, if I explain it to you in the presentation, I'm a consultant. If I argue with you about it at the end of the presentation, I'm a salesperson. So it's better to bring it up and be a consultant than go to the end and try to sell. So, so something like that, I would say number 2 in being a founder is I would be focused on people over systems. Systems can be adjusted. A lot of people will sit there in the beginning of starting their company and they'll just, for lack of a better word, just like kind of fool around. It's like, what did you do today? I made my own logo. Oh, you made your own logo. Okay. What is your ticket? What is your ticket price on your product? Oh, it's $2,000 a month. Okay. So you're telling me you spent a day to save $200 and you lost out on being one day closer to $2,000.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people, when starting their business, they think busyness is business. Business is when something fucking gets sold. Nothing happens until something gets sold. You don't have a business until you're selling your product. Until then, you have something you've built on paper that could be a business. But until you're, and I don't mean to be harsh, I hope this isn't taken that way, but I've watched so many people start companies and get 3 months into it, 6 months into it. And I'm just talking as a fellow entrepreneur, me talking to him, and I'm 6 months in and I've got 100 clients and I've got 15 people on the team. And I'm like, how's things going with you, man? And they're like, yeah, we've almost got our site up, waiting on that. And then, all I got, and I'm just like, what? Yeah, like, how do you live? Like, what are you doing? Like day labor while instead of sleeping? Like, how are you surviving? And so to me, I've always looked at business is closing deals and bringing in clients. And in your sales process, and obviously retention and all of that is important as well, and fulfillment and everything. But your sales process should be one of the first things that you refine down to a science. Let me give one more, since the rule of threes. The last thing I would say to a business owner, and again, we've already talked about it, but don't be afraid to delegate. Don't be afraid to find people. And listen, if they're great and you can only afford so much of their time, everybody's a contractor nowadays. Everybody's willing to break off and do a piece of work for you. It's just the way that it is. You're not going to find even if they're full-time employed with some great company, unless they're making 300 plus, if they've got a family, if they've got a life they're trying to live, everybody's a contractor. So maybe you just want a really great branding package. Go to this person and be like, hey, for 2 grand, versus agency price, but the agency price is 10 grand, but the actual person who did all the work in the development only got 2 grand anyway. So
Mhm.
when you go straight to that source, so don't be afraid to look and delegate. And so you should not be thinking, how can I get this done? But you should be saying, how can I find the right people to do this for me consistently? And when you have that mind frame, that allows you the flexibility of actually having a real life. I don't work 80 hours a week, and I'm less than 2 years into this. Now, my wife joked, she said, well, in the beginning, I was like, well, yeah, 6, 9 months. Sure. I got to work my tail off, 8 in the morning till 7 at night. Got to do what I got to do. But once I got my systems and my people and my foundations built, then I can trust that person. Like, again, I told you I have a team in Pakistan. I have a guy, Saad, there. And, we have about roughly 18 or 19, 20 people there. But I don't interview those people. I don't interview the hosts. My producer does it. She's out of Rochester, New York. I don't interview all of these positions and the growth and everything. They know what they're responsible for in the ecosystem of our company, and that's what I leave them to. And so looking for those pieces that you can build with as soon as possible. And if they buy into your vision, People will take less money for more fulfilling of an opportunity. When they see something exciting, they see someone exciting, they see that they get to be a part of something, everybody wants to be like, man, I was in this company and it was just a couple people, and then now it's doing $20 million a year, and I'm making 350 grand a year. Everybody wants that sort of like what we hear about, like those Facebook people
Mhm.
in the beginning or those Google people. And so when people see something that's exciting, that's refreshing, that's growing, that's, making a splash, they're just like, I want to be a part of that. They'll take less money to be there than some boring corporate thing where they're just shoved into a cubicle and they're said, now punch this button and do that all day long. And then when 5 o'clock comes, you get to go home. Like they would much rather be a part of something dynamic and exciting. So that's my bonus thing. Make your company exciting to where people want to be a part of it. Sell your company to potential employees. Don't sell the position as much as you sell where the company's going. And you can punch above your weight in recruiting much earlier because people buy vision over comp packages.
You talked about having the goal for 7 years from now. I don't know many founders who have a very clear goal other than I want to be a unicorn. Like, how did you come up with that goal, or do you have any advice for founders to come up with a clear goal and vision to sell to their team?
So one of the things I've noticed that happens with companies is, especially small companies that are built around the founder, and this is a mistake that I've made, is it becomes a cult of personality. And usually when you have a articulate, charismatic leader, that people tend to kind of flock. But then what happens is when that leader starts to step back, then the core people start saying things like, this just isn't what it used to be. And I remember when, and it becomes nostalgic of what it used to be. And so what I've tried to be careful with is not building my company based solely on my personality, but basing it on my processes and on the goals that we're looking towards. And so I don't just have a 7 year plan. I have a 5 year plan, a 3 year plan, a 1 year plan, a 3 month plan, and a 1 month plan. And every month I say, hey guys, we had this plan this month. We accomplished it. And in this area that we need to have, we had X amount of new clients come on, and the lead gen created this amount of those opportunities. And so we just kind of go through and we talk about where everybody is on our path together. It's almost like a caravan, right? Every once in a while you pull over to the side, make sure no one got stuck at a gas station 200 miles back.
Eh.
So we gather once a month and we just kind of make sure, hey, we're all on the same page. Remember, we did this last month. Now we're doing this month. And remember, in 3 months, we're doing this. And in a year, we're going to be here. And in 3 years, we're going to be here. And I usually talk about clients. So what I usually do is I say, we're going to be about this many clients. These are the product offerings that we have coming up, because I also have the professional podcast network and the medical podcast network. But I want to be entrenched with turnkey podcasting for professionals, as kind of like my goal is to be the Henry Ford of turnkey marketing so where basically everyone's like, oh, are you a professional, like a knowledge worker, where what you know is what makes you different than your competition? Then you need to go to this company, because what they do is they make you a local celebrity for your archetype of client in your marketplace. So that's really kind of like the overarching goal. But being able to just articulate, not just someday I'm going to be in Bali, everybody, like that's
Uh-huh.
not articulating a goal. That's half bragging, right? But when we say, listen, we want to do this in a month and get to this, and we want to do this in 3 months and get to this, and you just show them each step of the path, they don't see the 7 years, but they see the 1 and the 3. And when the 1 and the 3 happen each and every time, then guess what? They believe the 7 years. They don't have to have the same vision as you to go with you to that place. They just have to feel clear each step of the way as they go on the journey with you, that they are actually feel clarity and they're not being dragged along or mistreated or disrespected or whatever.
With a fully remote team in different parts of the world, how do you keep that momentum, excitement about the goals, and keeping everybody aware of what's going on across all teams?
So the awareness is the monthly meeting, just kind of
Mm.
like, here's what's going on with the teams and going like this. The constant motivation, we had Ring Central and then we moved to Slack. I didn't like either of those. I felt that they were very corporate and staid. So I actually built my own Discord server. I didn't build it, but I had a Discord server built because there's tons of GIFs on there and or GIFs, however you want to say it. There's tons of like it's made for gamers to tease and have fun, and it's like very frictionless for social interaction. And so, like, we celebrate wins like crazy. When I was the closer, I never said, "Hey, everybody, I just closed this deal. He fought me, but I got him." I say, "Hey, everybody, congratulations to Ben for setting up this appointment, and congratulations to Saad for creating the lead that, became the appointment. We just brought on this client, and I removed myself from that equation. And now what we do is when a sale happens, somebody else announces it and announces every person that's a part of it. And so just celebrating wins, but not just celebrating sales wins. We also celebrate lead gen wins. We celebrate product wins. We celebrate. So every department, and then when we do giveaways, we do pretty much everybody but the salespeople because they're our highest paid people. Everyone tries to give so much money to the salespeople. I'm like, listen, I'll tell you what these guys are going to make this year. They don't need an extra $500. They're fine. But when you send $500 to someone on the team in Pakistan because they got X amount of points, that impacts them in a much greater way. And I think that's been also the biggest differentiator in the way that I run a remote company. And it's simply this: what I have observed in people who have people that they work with in other cultures is two things. One, we expect them to fully have the same type of whatever you want to say, cultural preferences that we have, or we expect them to learn it. Well, they're working with an American, they should know. And it's like, well, you're working with a Filipino. You should know that they have a strong aversion to any sort of like friction. They'll ghost you if they feel like you're mad at them. They could be with you 3 years, and if they feel like you're angry, you lost them, right? So I'm not going to go, well, it's not my fault. They should know that Americans can be strict and like, so that's something that's really helped as well. Understanding the cultures, understanding the individuals, when they take off, like I went to my team in Pakistan. I said, okay, guys, what are you guys doing for Eid? Just so I know. And that's like a big religious holiday for them. And they're like, okay, these days, we'll have this much crew and we're kind of switching off, but I'll be here. And then this person will be covering that. I'm like, so we're covered? Yes. But everybody feels like this is fair. Like, are you getting your time? Yes, I'm getting my time to take my family to the mosque and do what I need. Okay, great. I just want to make sure that no one feels like working for me affects their religious duties. And so it's just understanding that across different cultures, different ages. I've got lots of Gen Z. I treat my Gen Z different and bring them up through my company very different than if I brought in a 35-year-old established individual. But my Gen Zs are my most creative, and they are the ones who are moving my company probably more than anybody else. But what I do is I just sandboxed them in their department. I knew what their overall skill set was. I brought them into their department and I said, okay, try this project. Oh, nice. Now try this project. Nice. Now try this project. Nice. Now, which ones of those did you enjoy? I really enjoyed this one. Well, you did very well on it. You know what? You own that project. Whatever, this is what I need from that project. It's your responsibility to get to that place. And when you give people ownership, then you know what I mean? They can take pride in their work. They can, they know what's expected of them. And so it's just a different dynamic.
And they can tie what they're expected to do to that greater goal and to the whole to what everybody else is working on. That makes it so much more fun.
Exactly.
What excites you about the future of where marketing's going?
I think, I kind of have. How far into the future are we going?
I don't know. Let's go 7 years.
Let's go 7 years. Okay. I think 7 years from now, what we'll have is is kind of like a shaking out of internet media, the way that traditional media shook out. So they'll start to be tiers, they'll be bigger, and we already see it. But they'll start even in podcasting, YouTube. You'll start to see some rise, some sit in the middle, some fall below, and then some quit, and then some just try but never quite succeed. With that, what I've been telling people in the podcasting media world is the big differentiator is two things. One, production value. And that's why I think AI needs eyes, because you lose. Do you know how many times I'm like watching, and I'm talking about like major people in my feed, and their own last name is misspelled. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, I'm sure it doesn't go past their eyes, but I watch my feeds and I watch my clients' feeds and competitive feeds and things like that. Like, not taking the time to have good production value and do things right is right now the number one way to show that you're humanity. Because, so there's that. And I believe that, like every other venue and medium, because we're opening this up to I want people, now we can start to create characters and shows and entertaining content beyond just, and this is the illustration I like to give. It used to be content was enough. And let's compare it to, for vegans and, strict vegetarians, plug your ears, please. Compare it to like a big juicy steak. Now, when there's one steak on the table, you go, "Ooh, that looks good. I'll take it." But what if you had three steaks on the table that same size, same marbling, same grade, they're prime, blah blah blah? How are you going to differentiate between the three? So right now, what we have is three pieces of content on the table. So what I might say is, okay, how are you going to cook those and how are you going to season them? Because that's going to determine whether or not I want which one. And so the one that has my preferred seasoning and my preferred cooking style, that's the one I'm going to pick. And so right now, it's enough to just put a steak on the table. But other people are starting to put their steak on the table. And so if you don't season and cook that thing, now it's just we're re-commoditizing ourselves by
Mm.
not differentiating ourselves with content. Everyone comes to do content to not be commoditized, and then they do the exact same content as all of their competitors are doing, and they just re-commoditize themselves with it. So that's where I think the future is going, is production value and entertainment value are going to be key in all media. However you do that, however you create that, whether it's just entertaining as a personality or entertaining as a delivery mechanism, like what we're trying to do with our cartoon AI generated BAM show.
So someone who's just diving into making content, whether they're a founder or they're in marketing, new to marketing, if there's so many stakes on the table, it sounds like they should figure out how to either niche down or figure out, who am I cooking this steak for? Who's the ideal customer who's going to eat this steak and what do they like, versus just slapping it on the table as is.
Exactly.
Are there any
Exactly.
final tips and tricks to figure out how to season that thing?
Work from your customer to you. Most people do marketing from them to the client. They think,
Okay.
who am I? What am I? Why do people want me? And that's no longer the way to do marketing. It is, who is my client? What are they like? What are their frustrations? What are their questions? What are the things that keep them up at night? And how can what I do specifically meet that need? And when we start marketing from the client to us, that's authoritative positioning. That's literally what authoritative positioning is.
Mhm.
It's putting yourself in a position to be approached as an authority. So when you build your marketing that way, it's not, come see me, the great DM who does podcasts. It's like, oh, you're a lawyer? Yeah, I've been working with lawyers for about 20 years. Tell me a little bit about your practice. Oh, you're trying to get more felony and above. You're getting a lot of, misdemeanor stuff for your criminal practice. Well, listen, we have a program where we can take and focus on that felony side of things so that when people in your market are asking questions and have fears about it, you're the one who answers and cultivate more clients. What do you think about that? Totally different approach.
It's a totally different approach. It's a little bit story brandish. I'm excited to see where your cartoon goes. Is it okay to call it a cartoon?
No, no,
Graphic?
that's
What is
fine.
it
I'm
called?
teasing.
Graphic?
It's
No.
just it is. It's well, right now it's just the guy standing, he's talking, and then we use B-roll to kind of illustrate it. We're
Okay.
not quite AI wise at full animation in picking your own style. There's a new one that just came out where you can basically take like Netflix, Nickelodeon style cartoons and like play on the thing, but we want our own world. So if you
Yeah.
want your own world, there's not quite a place to create that. You have to kind of do it from scratch. So with what we're getting and the amount of time and effort it takes, and these are very expensive shows right now. Like if
Mhm.
someone came to me and said, "Can I build this show?" I'd be like, "Yeah, but just the credits with the LLM and all of that alone are going to cost. Plus, you got to have somebody who either can learn it quickly or knows it already. That's an expense in and of itself. So it's one of those things. It's not quite a cartoon, but I really hope within about a year we'll be able to feed this into and just create this our own cartoon worlds for different shows if we want to do it, or at least worlds,
I'm
either
here
way.
for it. Well, I've had an awesome time. You've tied a lot of topics that people are asking me about together, and I wanna just pick your brain more and more and more about how to run a really good team because it seems like you've got that figured out. Any final words you wanna leave a founder or early stage owner with?
Look at the end and work backwards, whether it's the customer, whether it's your desired result. I think you kind of semi asked me, like, how did I come to 7 years? How did I get to that decision? I just literally built backwards from what my dream life was.
Mm.
That's all I did is where would I, if I could create what I want in the future, what would I create? And it would be to travel extensively, which I already travel a pretty decent amount anyway, but I take my laptop, set up and run my company. But travel in a way that I can be unplugged and of all the places, because I lived in Europe when I was in my 20s. I now live in Central America and we're going to do some time visiting in and around here. But of all the places I visited so far, like Southeast Asia has definitely been the most appealing for me to be a part of long term. So that's why I built that goal.
Chase it. I'm gonna go write mine down. I've been too
There you go.
wishy-washy.
There you go.
Appreciate appreciate you coming on. We're gonna put links to how to reach out to you in the description and where everyone can follow you in your journey.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much, TM.